We got a bidet!
Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. In this week's Shoot the Sheev podcast, we are talking about the second half of something we've talked about in the past already. We talked about there's the Clone Wars that we know that kind of looks like Pixar almost on Disney Plus, which is reflective of the Star Wars animation that is currently out. But there was a Clone Wars series before then that was taking place between episode 2 and episode 3. Like it was being made during those times. And it's this 2D animation style that you can see behind both of us. There was a volume 1 and there was a volume 2 that was made during the downtime between Attack of the Clones theatrical release and Revenge of the Sith. So we already covered...
Sorry, if you look at Disney Plus, they call it the vintage Clone Wars, and boy, doesn't that make you feel old.
Yeah, it does make me feel old. Well, also remember, I think we talked about this on the other podcast video, but I tried recording these on VHS. It's that old. So thankfully, they did come out on DVD at one point, but they basically came out at that one point and then not again. So it can be kind of hard to come across if you want a physical copy. But anyways, this is volume 2. I was talking about there was volume 1. We already did the video on that one. Now we're talking about volume 2. So volume 1 took place right after the Clone Wars, and then this kind of fills in some of those gaps of different war battles that happen throughout the time. But then it eventually gets to the point of the season, or volume, I should say, at the very end where it's supposed to lead up to right as Revenge of the Sith starts. I can say that just like for volume 1 when I was a kid, I wasn't able to keep up with these week to week just because they had weird scheduling. I finally got to watch them when I got a hold of the DVD that came out and had all of them on it. So not a whole lot that I can remember as a kid that was much different from volume 1. I think they had action figures for this volume as well. They definitely had some of the bigger toys. Like in this season, one of the Republic gunships, looks like a creature because it's got this really cool paint job.
You're talking about the shark teeth, that are on the front?
That was really cool. That was actually like a big physical toy, like huge. It was probably like $100 in the store. That did release, so it leads me to believe that more of these figures came out as well. I just don't really recall because I never bought any of them. I know probably for you probably didn't have much exposure to this stuff when you were younger.
I didn't even know it existed until you told me about it a couple months ago.
So just so we're, I know we probably talked about it a little bit in the other podcast, but what's kind of your first impression to the series? Like to this animation? Was it a little bit shocking? Is it weird to you? Not necessarily your likes and dislikes, but just overall thoughts about it.
Sure. So the first season was definitely a big shock. I kind of got a taste for the animation style when they were doing what are those called? There's a new Disney Plus series. They just did a mini season on last year, and they're gonna do another one this year. Last one was about Ahsoka and Dooku.
Tales of the Jedi.
Yes. So I've had kind of a taste of at least a similar art style, and I think they were similar.
No, not even close. Tales of the Jedi was the same as the Clone Wars that's out now.
Okay, let me rephrase. they're both weird cartoon styles to me that I'm not used to.
Hmm.
So I guess they're both expanding my horizons a bit. This first season of this that we watched, the first episode, what have you, that one was definitely a lot more shocking for me than this one. This one I kind of knew what to expect because we've watched the last episode, so we've already watched a full hour's worth before we got into this one. Uh, it's pretty crazy. A lot of the characters, I can tell who they are for the most part, but it's almost kind of one of those like, wow, you look really different. I'm almost surprised I was able to tell what character you are sometimes. Um, some of them are easier to tell than others, and of course, there's all these cues, to let you know either name drops or different story elements that you can pick up on that because I've seen the main movies, I knew who a lot of these characters were. But like for example, some of the Jedi that were protecting the Emperor or Chancellor, if you will, they're pretty wild looking. And I don't remember really seeing them before. So I don't know if I have and I just don't recognize them, or if they're just that different that maybe they made them up for this series. I have no idea. But I do think that they're really interesting to look at. And I guess to kind of wrap up my initial thoughts of would I want more in this art style? Yeah, it's pretty neat. I got used to it enough that I was able to enjoy it, and the art style didn't take away too much from being able to, you know, uh, understand what was going on. It's from a time period that I haven't seen on film or on in shows because I haven't seen the Clone Wars like the other one, the newer seasons, right? And I haven't seen Rebels, so I haven't seen a whole lot of any of that time period um in any form of media. So to be able to get some sort of an understanding, I think was really neat. It's a very long-winded answer, but there you go.
It's very different. I know looking at what we have now for the Clone Wars, which is the thing that gets the most attention probably between the two, it's a little shocking, especially because the Star Wars animation now is like I always reference it, it's a lot closer to like Pixar and Disney animation currently. So having this 2D is definitely a bit different. One thing I thought was interesting, and it's kind of what I was just looking up, is what was the release schedule like? And when did the DVD come out and all that good stuff? So they actually like picked a week and released one episode per day on each of the days of the week. So at least according to Wikipedia. Um, so like on March 21st, they released the first episode, March 22nd, the second episode, and this was divided up between 5 different episodes that were about 12 to 15 minutes apiece. So it's interesting because you could kind of see the different breaks as you watch. Like that's about 12 to 15 minutes. And that section was about 12 to 15 minutes, stuff like that. But it came out in March of '05, and it came out during that one little week there. And then in May, so about 2 months later, is when Revenge of the Sith came out. So we got this little taste that led up to right as Revenge of the Sith is supposed to start. So then we kind of, well, I guess not me technically, because I didn't watch it before Revenge of the Sith, but it was supposed to lead audiences right up to Revenge of the Sith. And the ending of the show has some urgency. Like the Chancellor was kidnapped, Anakin and Obi-Wan are on the way. What's going to happen? And then in 2 months, you got to see the resolution to that. I did see that the DVD came out later that year in December. So at the earliest, that's probably when I saw it eventually.
You bringing up the runtimes reminded me of a big difference between this episode versus the last episode. And when I say episodes, I mean the like 1 hour blocks that we watched.
Volume.
Volumes, thank you. So the other one was basically 4 minute clips back, 4 or 5 minute ish, back to back to back to back. And this one, you saying they were like 12 to 15 minute clips chopped up.
Yep.
So that was one thing that I noticed is I was almost kind of, and I think we talked about this the last time when we were talking about the first volume and runtimes and stuff like that, but I totally have forgotten when we were watching this one. And I was almost kind of waiting for those like 4 minute jump breaks, like scene changes like every few minutes. And this one seemed a lot more fluid, I think. It wasn't so discombobulated, for lack of better words here. They definitely still jumped scenes a lot and definitely more frequently than every 12 minutes, but it seemed a lot more fluid between the different scenes that they were going between. Because we go a lot between, what's going on with Anakin and Obi-Wan, and then what's going on with Mace Windu, and what's going on with General Grievous and with the Chancellor. So those are kind of all some of their paths intertwine and whatnot, but those are kind of all different storylines that we're following at the same time. And they do go back and forth, kind of like in the first volume, but it's just a lot more fluid, I think.
Yeah, I would totally agree. It didn't feel as choppy.
Yeah. Thank goodness I don't have to wait a week in between or even a day in between for what's going on for these different episodes because I'd be chomping at the bit, I think.
Yeah. It's real. I guess I can't remember because I was a kid and I wasn't able to put one and two together with like release schedules. But like when you think about the different shows that we grew up with, so like SpongeBob or um Powerpuff Girls, Dexter, Ed, and Eddie, all stuff like that. There's tons of episodes in each of those seasons, and I I I wonder if they were like this show where like there was a new episode every day for X amount of weeks, or was it just one episode a week like most TV shows nowadays? Like, how do you remember anything of how that works? I personally don't, but it just makes me wonder if that's what the norm was. So that's why they did it, back to back to back in one week. Because when I saw that it started in March, I had wondered, well, there's 5 episodes here. So if you do it at like the end of March, go through April, then that's like really close to Revenge of the Sith, you know?
I do not remember daily or weekly episodes. However, and I'm looking up just for an example, one of the ones that you mentioned. I do remember there being commercials advertising new episodes of some of those shows, like a new episode of SpongeBob's coming out next week Friday. But was it every day versus weekly? That I don't remember.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't remember either, unfortunately. But I don't know, maybe that was the norm back then, and that was why it wasn't so shocking. It is a little shocking to me right now, just because, of what I'm used to, but yeah, maybe it was just different times. Let's see. Anything else that we should cover here in the beginning segment? Again, like I said, growing up, I had to wait till I got to see it on DVD, so uh I didn't get the experience to watch it day to day to day because I remember that when I saw the first season, I had a tough time and I talked about that in the other podcast. But seeing that there was another one coming out, I basically thought to myself, I'm just going to wait till they all come out and didn't realize that they were, every day back to back to back. So I don't know. It's tough being a kid, especially keeping track of all your favorite shows.
So I try to look it up for SpongeBob just because that's one of my favorite childhood cartoons that I even still watch today sometimes. Um, at least for their first season, it is really choppy how often they released episodes. There was like a 6 week gap, then a 2 week gap, then it was weekly, then some of them were daily. At least for that first season, it was all over the place. according to IMDb. So
Hmm.
I'm not sure what the norm is. That doesn't really answer a question.
Part of
Maybe
me
there's a
wonders.
standard.
Part of me wonders with that season one if they were just testing the waters, and that's why they were kind of, release a whole bunch, see how people react, and then make some more, and then release. Because SpongeBob, they usually show, and I guess that applies to other shows too. Because I can remember Powerpuff Girls, Dexter, Ed, Ed and Eddie, all the ones I mentioned along with SpongeBob. There's usually 2 episodes a piece for that half hour, so I can imagine they can make those shorts pretty quickly.
I
Um,
skipped to season 4 just for an example because season 1 was 1999, season 4 was 2005, which I think was the same year you said this came out, correct?
2005. Yep.
Yeah. So again, according to IMDb, it was a week between episodes 1 and 2. Oh, they skip around so much.
Like,
Then it looks like it was 2 weeks. I mean, like episode 4 came out a few months before episode 3 in their episode list, so
oh,
it's very
really?
bouncing around.
Come on, IMDb, what's going on here?
I
That's
I
why.
don't know. It's hard to say. It looks like they're mostly weekly though.
Gotcha. Well, I don't know. Cool. It just, I guess, different way of doing it, I suppose.
Very messy,
Yeah. I'm
but
sure maybe there was just things going on during those times, like maybe skipping spring break or skipping summertime. I don't know. Who knows?
you
Um,
got to remember with a show like that too, though, that it's not like this Clone Wars season where this was one main story with several pieces, just chopped up. A lot of things with a lot of these other TV shows, like SpongeBob, for example, most of the episodes don't really connect to one another.
yeah, they're like little one-off adventures.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's our little introduction into the Clone Wars Volume 2 of the 2D animation. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about some of our tough loves for this show. So stick around. Have you ever wondered what it's like to grow up during the prequel era? Do you wonder what type of merchandise was around then? How different was it than it is now? Check out our videos on this channel where we talk about the merchandise of The Phantom Menace and the merchandise of Attack of the Clones. They are here on this channel. The Phantom Menace is my first video ever on YouTube, so there's a special place in my heart for that one, so please, if any, check that out. Now back to our show. All right, welcome back. We are here to now talk about some tough loves for Volume 2 of the 2D animated Clone Wars show. I know Sarah said, or she told me that she had a couple of them she wanted to talk about. So what you got?
So a lot of them are pretty nitpicky, but I'm gonna attempt to go in chronological order of the episode, like starting from things that are in the beginning towards then more towards the end. I'm
Yep.
trying anyway. So don't come at me if they're out of order.
Just
No,
one at a time, and then we'll talk about them.
my first one is Mace Windu's purple ship. So I actually really liked that his ship was purple, but after his ship kind of exploded and he wasn't able to use it anymore, and he jumped onto this other little yellow
The Vulture
ship.
droid.
There, it's a vulture droid. You call that a droid? It looks like a ship.
That's because the ship is a droid.
Oh, that would make sense why there's no cockpit for anybody to fly it, I suppose. But he rips off this like control panel and then he reaches his arms into these wires and it looks like he's getting electrocuted and just zapped all over the place. And he's holding onto these wires and it really kind of looks like he's got a handful of worms, but the worms are the wires and it looks so strange. And then what happens next just baffled me. He's flying the ship as if he's steering a horse with these wires in his hands, like as if it's the reins to a horse, and he's, flying back and forth and controlling which way the ship's going. And I mean, it's creative, but it's utterly ridiculous.
So I think this is a good lead into telling everybody that this show is ridiculous. There's some like really big over exaggerations or just really pushing the boundaries on some things. This being one of them for sure. Mace Windu, some because when he sticks his hand in there, the droid actually like powers down. So somehow he like uses the force to repower that thing on and then uses it as a horse. Um, but I also want to point out, like, as far as ridiculousness, because this is the one that I thought it was in volume one, and I was like, just wait for this moment. It's like really ridiculous. And then it actually happened in this one. And it was um Yoda's like meditating, and then Mace Windu comes in and he goes, "The city's under attack." And then Yoda is like, "Defend the city, we must." And like flips around super fast and just throws his arms in the air. Like, what you doing with those arms, Yoda? What you doing? So
Almost looks like he's dabbing.
yeah, he was dabbing before dabbing was cool, I guess. But yeah, there's definitely some really ridiculous things in this show. But hey, remember Star Wars is for kids, and so they were trying to make it as cool and action packed as possible.
It at least made it not boring, I'll give you that.
Yeah, and you know what? Jedi, they fly now.
I guess they do. Okay, so my next one, in the scene after Anakin helps these like weird townsfolk, if you will, he like rescues the men of this village that had been captured and tried to train. They were trying to be turned into some sort of like ultra soldiers, right? So after he saves them, and he's looking like the image behind Jeremy. I'm not sure exactly where that image came from in terms of, if that image was before or after this. But anyway, so
So this was pretty late in the show, like after he saved them.
I got you. They have one of these scenes, and he's been shirtless throughout this whole time, and you hadn't seen any armpit hair until this one scene, and he's got this like a full-on giant bush of hair coming out of his armpit, like the size of my fist. It just looks huge, 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 huge amount of hair. Okay, if he really had that much hair, don't you think we would have seen it by now since he's been shirtless for the last 20 minutes?
Hey, they're just keeping it real. They're like, this thing has got to be extreme, extreme armpit hair. Yeah, buddy.
It's like he's a man now, apparently, because he's got this massive amount of armpit hair that he didn't have 10 minutes ago. So he must have, gained his Jedi, not master, sorry, Anakin, but his Jedi knighthood because that was the end of his trial, right? So that was one of his Jedi trials.
What? What was?
Well, Mace Windu said that that whole mission of going to save these people was part of his Jedi trials, even though he
Mm.
had already become a Jedi, but because he became a Jedi Knight before actually finishing his trials to become a Jedi. So Mace said, this section, it's gonna help you look within to see yourself and stuff, and we'll get into this whole scene a bit more in our next segment because I want to save it for one of the things that I liked. But after he completed this, and I'm really reaching hard here. I'm just trying to justify this ridiculous armpit hair. After he finished this trial, all of a sudden, then he had the armpit hair. So it's like he's a real man now. Like he finished going through his trials, and he's ready to take on whatever life throws at him because he's not a boy anymore. He's a man.
I mean, to be fair, in the picture behind me, we can't even see the armpit hair.
Well, that's because he's coming at you. It's behind him.
Oh, I suppose so. It's like his armpit hair went Super Saiyan.
That's
I
what it
will
looked like, this giant bush.
I will add in here too, because you were talking about like the native people that he was helping. They look a lot, and I mean a lot, like the characters from Avatar. I'm just putting it out
Yes.
there, everybody. This came out in 2005. Avatar came out in 2009. So sit down, James Cameron.
I was thinking the same thing. They looked a lot like Avatar characters, but you're right. It's kind of the reverse. Avatar characters look like them.
Yeah. I just wanted to plug that in there because if people ever watch and they're like, they just copied avatars. No. No.
Sit down, boy. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. Okay, so I know that was really nitpicky. My other two are also almost just as nitpicky. And I'm not sure which one really came first in terms of, the order of the show here. But we have another scene, much like Volume 1, where Mace Windu has a lightsaber and is going after these droids. And instead of using said lightsaber, he just punches the crap out of them, like, like super crazy fast. And
Come
she looks cool,
on.
but why are you not using your lightsaber? Come on, that's what it's there for.
That was a cool scene. We don't see anybody else punch droids like Mace Windu does
We certainly don't, you're right. But why is he doing that exactly?
because it's awesome. What more do you need?
Do we not see anybody else do it because it's unnecessary?
No, because nobody punches droids like Mace Windu. But it's funny to me because like when he punches them so fast, it sounds like a machine gun.
Yeah, it does.
Brrrr.
All right, one last one here on my list, and that is having to do with the Jedi squad that is trying to help save Chancellor Palpatine. One of them is this weird, I'm gonna call him Owl Man. And he's got four eyes, and he's actually pretty cool looking. But that is exactly what I'm bringing up, is his weird little mouthpiece. So, you got this big owl man, like that sounds crazy and it's cool, and he looks, like fluffy, like a teddy bear, but like he's a white owl, and he's got these four giant eyes. He's just really interesting looking. And I guess I don't know what an owl man would sound like, but he's got this weird, like, it's like he's got a breadstick hanging out of his mouth, except that's his mouth.
All I'm saying is I didn't hear you complaining about him when they had one in the cantina in episode 4.
I don't remember seeing him before.
Yep. Well, they show that species at the cantina, and then they also show his little mouth thing, and he goes like
He must have sounded different then because this did not look right. It didn't look natural.
nothing really looks natural in this show, to be fair. But
Well, I don't, that's part of what I was trying to say before on, character relations and being able to tell who the characters are. And that for the most part, I was okay with it. But apparently, this is one I missed and wasn't able to pick up on, was that species being the same.
well, to be fair, it's like a I don't know 3 second shot in A New Hope, but it is in there.
Sure.
I would probably say one of the. I mean, honestly, I love the show. There's not really anything that really bothers me. I will say though, growing up as a kid, I really liked the first volume a lot more. Because as a kid, I saw Anakin's arc as boring compared to volume 1, where he's, chasing down Ventress and has this epic battle at the end of volume 1. Whereas volume 2, he's supposed to go on this, symbolic mission, and he just kind of goes in and destroys a base. Like he
Did
doesn't
you
have.
see this before episode 3 when you were like when you saw it as a kid and stuff?
Nope.
You saw it after episode 3?
Yeah.
Okay, so it truly was then just you're not the right age group to be able to pick up on the foreshadowing in this and whatnot.
No. Nope. I didn't pick up on, even when I watched it the first time. I mean, I picked up on just to, I guess, talk a little bit about it. Part of the so there's like a premonition type thing that they show on the cave walls that looks like cave drawings, and there's part of it that's like blatantly obvious of what they're referring to because they make the picture of Darth Vader. I picked up on that. It took a couple of watchings to pick up on all the other stuff, but
I'm the exact opposite. I did not see Darth Vader in that.
split second, I knew what I was looking for. So I can show you later, but yeah,
That's fine.
they
And
do.
we'll dive more into this in the next section anyway.
Yeah. So just my little nitpicky is from when I was younger. I didn't see this one as exciting. Plus, Obi-Wan really has nothing to do in this volume. Is he's basically a background character that does nothing.
Yeah, he really doesn't do a whole lot except for trying to guide Anakin very slightly. And
Yeah,
he's a translator.
yeah, because I guess you learn quite a bit of languages when you travel around with Qui-Gon. That was his excuse for knowing so many languages. I didn't pick up on what the species was. I think they said it, but I don't remember.
Ooh, I don't remember.
But yeah, I guess that's some of our tough loves for this show. So when we come back, we're gonna talk about the things that we really liked. So stay tuned. Have you ever wondered what Amazon coffins are and what they're full of? Well, we got you covered here on the channel. Check out our playlist of our Amazon coffin unboxings where Sarah and I open up boxes that have Amazon returns and we share with all of you what we get in each of those boxes. If you ever wanted to get into liquidation and want to know what types of things you can find, check us out. Now back to our show. Welcome back, everybody. We are here now with our things that we really liked about this Clone Wars Volume 2 2D animated special. Once again, I'm going to kick it off with Sarah this time just to see what kind of things that she liked. I've seen this is new to her. This is probably more exciting of a watch for her than it was for me. So I'm curious to know about what you got. That's why I'm starting with you.
Sure. No, that's fine. I got a list going here. One of the first things, this is going to be another one of those very ridiculous and kind of cringy things, but I thought it was funny, so it's on my list of likes instead of dislikes. And that is when C3PO comes back to Anakin and Padme, and he's wearing this weird robe, which I'm not entirely sure why he's wearing a robe, except for the excuse to uh kind of he's being very scandalous when he takes it off and almost kind of shy to show his body off, which is weird for a droid to have those types of feelings. But Anakin sees that he's got this gold plating that he hasn't seen before. And so, in a very scandalous way, he kind of shakes off his robe and then shows off all his gold plating. And it's just very strange to see a droid act in such a way. But I thought it was hilarious. So it's on my list of likes.
Oh, it was hot. It was hot. It was a moment. So he had the robe on because him and Padme were trying to go through the streets of Coruscant being undetected. They didn't want to draw attention to themselves because, I mean, right before that, we see, you know, Anakin and Padme making out in an alleyway, you know, real romantic of them. But it's kind of funny because 3PO interrupts them just like he interrupts Han and Leia in Empire Strikes Back. So
He is real good at that.
they do a good handful of callbacks in this show, which I think is funny. Like what was the other one? Obi-Wan said it when they were in the sewers.
I knew you
Like,
were going to say that. Is that what you're
and
referring to?
no, it was like what an interesting smell you discover or something like that.
Oh, that's great.
Han says it in the trash compactor.
I love it. This next one, this was kind of a cool. I'm almost gonna call it an Easter egg, even though it's not really an Easter egg, but to me it felt that way. And that is General Grievous collecting his lightsabers. So, of the Jedi that he's killed. This is something that I know Jeremy's told me before that he does. So I guess the information wasn't necessarily new, but I'd never seen it before, and I didn't really know that it was a thing, other than Jeremy telling me it's a thing. But we like to play this board game that's called Villainous. There's a Disney Villainous, there's a Marvel Villainous, and then there's a Star Wars Villainous, right? And you get to play as the villain, and you have these objectives, very much every villain has different objectives to go against the good guys of whatever show or movie they're from. So when you play as General Grievous, you are trying to collect the lightsabers of Jedi by defeating Jedi and collecting all these lightsabers. And that's how you win the game when you're playing as General Grievous in the game Star Wars Villainous. So I've actually played that character and had that objective and was trying to go through, the missions that he would go through. And I know it's a very I was almost gonna say it's kind of a loose correlation, but you're essentially playing through his character in the films, or at least his maybe films isn't the right word, but in the how would you describe that, I guess?
And you're just playing out all the different, basically his main motivation: slaughter
Yeah,
and kill Jedi. And then as he kills them, he collects their lightsabers.
yeah.
Who knows? Maybe he makes a little portrait too.
So it wasn't necessarily an Easter egg, but for me it was a very cool moment of, oh, I've kind of done that before when I played as his character in a board game. So it was neat for me to be able to see that, where it wasn't just me reenacting what had happened. Did you have a similar feeling or no, because you already knew he did it?
No, I mean, when we played Villainous, I made the connection there. Just
Right.
because I knew it. It wasn't me watching this specifically and then learning about it. Um, I did have one thing that I liked that is reflective or similar to the Grievous topic. Actually,
Sure.
two things. One of them is I did not pick up on this before. I actually picked up something that I didn't know before in this. And
Nice.
that is when Anakin is saving these native um husbands, champions they call them, because the whole reason why he's sent to this village is the village has like this scary thing out there that is causing all of the men to be disappearing from the village because it's only women and children at the village. And then once some of them disappeared, they started sending more of them to try to go get the others and bring them back. They're trying to figure out who is this chosen one of their tribe to go and bring them back. And so Anakin is the one that has to go out there and do it. And while he's at the base, the separatist base, which is where they're all being held, he's looking through the computer data bank things, and he actually sees an image of Grievous's body parts, like the different mechanical limbs and stuff. So he kind of gets an idea of who this Grievous character is, even though he hasn't seen him yet. So I thought that was kind of cool. It was like a little foreshadowing that, this is possibly or the group of scientists that may have created his armor, so to speak, or exoskeleton, if you want to be more specific. So I thought that was really cool. And then I also really like how Grievous is like really creepy, because there's like different segments when they are trying to avoid the Chancellor being kidnapped by Grievous. And like, for example, right before Grievous busts into the Emperor's office, he like creeps his head over the edge of the window and like peers in. And then we see like the really scared reaction of Shak Ti. Like she's like, yo, behind you. And then Grievous busts in the office and starts causing mayhem. And he does this periodic throughout the show as well. There's another time when they're in an elevator and they're trying to get away from Grievous, and then you just see his head poke out, and you're like, "Oh God, more danger!" They can't outrun him, and so I just like how creepy he is. Like he's almost like a creeper kind of a thing. So
It
yeah,
did add some depth to his character. I liked it too.
yeah, it's unfortunate because I feel like we got more Grievous character development in this show than we did in the movie. Because really, all he really did in the movies was fight and tell the separatist leaders that they're going to Mustafar. So I guess it was really good that they did it in this show so that we can get some character development as opposed to having, read books and all that. Because there is also a lot of information on him in the books as well. Like, how did he come to be? Because he wasn't like this whole time. He's kind of like Vader, where they made an exoskeleton and then salvaged what organs they could to keep him alive. So,
Gross.
yeah. What's another one that you got?
Oh boy. I've got some about Palpatine and one about Anakin. So which one should we go into first? Because you kind of touched on both.
Palps.
All right. I thought it was neat actually being able to see Chancellor Palpatine being kidnapped. This is one of those things where, watching episode 3, I kind of struggled with the whole trying to keep up with what's going on and how he essentially is staging his own kidnapping and how that all worked and everything else. And I've had you explain it to me many, many times, and I still kind of struggle with it. And I feel like I shouldn't. I feel like it shouldn't be that hard to understand, but for whatever reason, I struggle. And so being able to actually see kind of some of the uh, scenes or time frames of leading up to that and seeing his actual kidnapping and how did that actually all play out, that I thought was very neat and really kind of helps give me a little bit more of a leg to stand on of understanding what's going on and how did that all play out and how did he actually get kidnapped, like what happened. Did he just oh my gosh, he's been kidnapped because he disappeared or what? Because he essentially is kidnapping himself. Just nobody knows it. So being able to see this part on film, I thought was very helpful for me in understanding how any of that stuff started for that episode. So I
Yeah,
really enjoyed it.
I don't know, but I don't think Grievous was told the overarching plan. Especially because in episode 3, when he's talking to Palpatine, he's like, what about the loss of Count Dooku? Like, he's really shocked that that happened, and he doesn't really know about the Emperor's plan to find somebody, like Anakin, until he kind of spells it out to him that he wants somebody younger and more powerful than Count Dooku was. But we do know that Dooku was in on it, at least because when the Emperor or when Palpatine was telling Anakin to kill Dooku, we see his face of like utter disbelief of, I thought we were bros. And then he gets his head chopped off. So
Kind of one of those things of you probably want as few people to know as possible because the more people that know, the more likely your cover's going to get blown.
right. I mean, because really his only cover is the cover of the hood that he puts over his head.
Yeah.
Has anybody been like, I know those teeth? It's like, just see this gnarly teeth in the hologram. Could they ever like be like in a meeting and just be like, Palpatine, here's a joke for you, and just makes him laugh, and then sees his teeth and being like, you're the Emperor.
Yes,
Got
because
him.
there's no such thing as fake teeth.
You think he had? You think he put false teeth in every time he did a message?
I don't know. Do you think that really a hoodie is all that kept him from being discovered as being the same thing?
Well, between the hoodie and the drop in his voice, yeah.
It's a great impression. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
So one other small thing to kind of go along with this scene of him being kidnapped and whatnot is of the Jedi that are with him, there's a brown guy with a very long neck. Do you know his name or species by chance?
I do not, but I will look it up. It's an alien creature, by the way, people. Alien creature, not human.
Yeah, he's got this like massively long neck and this like weird shaped head with big old eyes on the side. And we've definitely seen this species before. Uh, I just don't know what it is or what it's
I just
called.
didn't want people to get bent out of shape that you said brown character. That's all.
No, I understand. That's why I specified species. It's not human, it's a different species. I just don't know what species it is. But anyway, so I think we've seen it in Book of Boba, actually. I think
Did
that's
he was the mayor.
yeah, that's where I'm
Well,
remembering.
the species was.
Right. It's not the same character, but it's the same species. But anyway, when we saw it portrayed in Book of Boba, he had these weird like puck things on his neck that helped him talk. But that's all the really more that we got about how that species interacts with other species. And so in this Jedi, you can actually see his like almost gills in his neck. And again, his neck is like crazy long, like probably, I don't know, I want to say at least a foot long, if not like 2 feet long. It's ridiculous. But and that's not an over exaggeration. Like that's just what their species looks like. They didn't over exaggerate that for this cartoon. That's just what they look like. But anyway, okay, I'm getting sidetracked. You can actually see his gills in his neck in this, and he has this weird, I don't know if it's a Jedi power or if it's just a power of their species, but he has this weird, like, scream slash yell that he does that's I keep saying ridiculous. I'm sorry. But it's super strong, and to the point where it's creating this super strong wind that Grievous is having a hard time not falling off the platform of the building that they're on. Like he's having to dig his mechanical feet into the metal of the building and crushing parts of the building in order to hold on to have something to hold on, like as if he's rock climbing up a cliff. But he's really just walking on flat ground. So to be able to see that type of power come from somebody's gills in their neck, it's just that was astounding to me. I'd never seen anything like it. It was very, very different, and I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, he was probably one of my favorites in this volume just because of the uniqueness of his powers. Um, I'm getting, oh, here's it is. Ithorians. I think that's what it's spelled. That's the species, Ithorians.
Okay.
I don't know his name per se. Let's see, Clone Wars Volume 2, Ithorian.
He would have been in volume one also, because they
Oh,
had that same group of Jedi trying to go against Grievous in volume one.
his name is Roran Korob.
Very nice.
I think she said something like that they have four mouths or four stomachs or four lungs or something. There's something that it makes it so that he can have that extra power with his mouth, voice, whatever.
Yeah. This next one I'm gonna let you take, but I'm gonna kind of introduce it here because I know this is one that we share as a really cool thing, and that is Anakin's line drawing story arc in the cave.
Yeah, so eventually Anakin gets to this point in the story where he sees these cave drawings, and the cave drawings come alive, and we basically see, this what appears to be a male and a female that they like fall in love, and then the man or the male is like fending off this darkness thing, and then eventually the male's arm gets cut off, and then he has like this new arm that resembles the darkness, and then that arm like destroys all the people he cares around him, and eventually destroys the female that he's with that we believe is his girlfriend, and then the arm eventually just destroys himself, and it configures into a picture of Darth Vader, which is basically foreshadowing Anakin's future, because eventually we know that he, because of the darkness in his heart and through his rage, decides to kill all his friends, and then eventually, through his anger, kills his wife. So, well, leads to the death of his wife, I should say.
You could
And then,
see that the body of the figure didn't really understand what was going on with this mechanical arm that was, it was like the body was upset that this arm was reaching over and then killing her. Like it was a conflict of that's not what I intended, that's not what I wanted. Why am I doing this?
right. Yeah. So it was like a really, really cool representation there of foreshadowing for Anakin in the future. Like again, like you said, Mace Windu told him that this was a trial and that he's going to have to go through this spiritual stuff. And I think this is where that
Obi-Wan.
actually happened. Oh, it was Obi-Wan? I thought you said Mace Windu. Sorry.
All right.
But yeah, that was the other really cool part.
I did not pick up immediately that this was uh Anakin watching himself. And it wasn't until basically the characters around him were dying and then the girl got taken. And then that's where I realized, like, oh, this is actually Anakin's story. And so I thought that was really kind of neat of it wasn't super spelled out, but if you know, you know.
Right. Yeah. So that were the things that we really liked. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some loose ends and wrap it up for you. So stay tuned. Have you seen The Mandalorian? Do you wonder what Operation Cinder was that they mentioned in the show? Well, we got you covered because we have an entire playlist dedicated to the Star Wars Battlefront 2 campaign, which highlights Operation Cinder. So if you check out our playlist, you'll be able to see what actually happened with Operation Cinder and know what they're talking about with the show. Now back to ours. Welcome back, everybody. This is our final segment here for Shoot the Sheev, where we're wrapping up our thoughts, some loose ends, or maybe just things that we thought of that we forgot to mention in the other segments. In between the break here, Sarah mentioned she wanted to bring something up. So what you got?
Yeah, so this is one of those things of I didn't fully pick up on or understand what was going on, and so I'm kind of looking for a little bit of clarification. So Obi-Wan and Anakin have come to this planet, and they must not have come there to kill this giant creature because Obi-Wan's upset that Anakin killed it. Why are they there? Why did they go there in the first place? Do we know?
Wasn't that his mission, like his trial? I thought you said that.
Well, what Obi-Wan was saying, a while after this, when he's being told he has to go into this cave and follow the river and all that stuff, and he's got all this body paint on him and stuff, is that the mind part of that cave was his trial because it's about looking into yourself. That was the trial he hadn't gotten to have yet.
Oh, so my guess is they weren't anticipating running into these people, but then since they needed help, he
Yes,
stopped.
but okay, why were they there?
Why was who there? Anakin and Obi-Wan?
Yes.
So he could go see the thing about his fate? I feel like you're answering your questions and re-asking them.
Okay. So here's my interpretation. They, for whatever reason, are at this planet and they see this giant creature and it's trying to kill them. Obi-Wan doesn't want to kill it. I don't know why. I guess probably because killing's bad for Jedis. You're not supposed to kill things if you don't have to. But Anakin kills it anyway because he's Anakin. He doesn't listen to anybody, and he didn't hear him, much like any teenage boy, uh, with their selective hearing. But then all this weird tribe, which was actually the Avatar looking people, come out and they're upset. And that's when Obi-Wan says, I don't think you should have done that because like it seems like they're upset. And we later find out that apparently they aren't upset that the big creature was killed. They just see like wow, you must be really strong if you killed that big creature. Maybe you're kind of like the chosen one, so to speak. Can you go help find the rest of our men and save them? And then afterwards, that's when Obi-Wan says, this was kind of like your final trial of being a Jedi is, to be able to look within yourself and whatnot. But I don't think they knew that all of that was going to happen before they got there. That was kind of just a consequence of Anakin killing this giant creature. So I don't know why they're there in the first place.
I don't know. It's a good question. I'm trying to look it up personally. Uh,
Maybe it's just that they heard about some sort of a base that was there, like the separatist base that you mentioned, which is where Anakin goes and saves the rest of the men from that village. So maybe that's why they went there in the first place, was that they knew that there was issues with a separatist base or something, although I'm not sure how or why they would have known that.
it says here that they arrive at the system and they detected no enemy forces on the planet, but found the planet in the grip of a sudden ice age,
Mm,
accompanied by some strange geothermal readings. So they decided to go check it out.
that makes
Oh,
sense
the
because
planet, the
go ahead,
planet name was Nelvon.
Nelvan.
Nelvon.
Okay. That does make sense because after Anakin destroys the like power source of that base, all of a sudden there's kind of like this big, deep thaw where the river is suddenly flowing again, and then the river's not frozen anymore, and they're using baskets or like makeshift buckets to catch water dripping from the cave walls and stuff because everything's thawing. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that was one of those things where I didn't really understand why they were there. I must have missed it somehow. Um, but I was just trying to put those pieces together.
Yeah. One small thing I guess I'll add in here at the end, and I guess it's very small, is there was just a very, very brief shot of the droid invasion starting in Kashyyyk. So we see a couple of
Mm.
Wookiees swinging through the trees, and then
They
we
look
see,
ridiculous.
I'm sure
I
they did.
I can't use this word enough. They look like orangutans.
Um, yeah, they see like a huge transport for the droids, and they start deploying uh, just hundreds and thousands of droids and tanks, and they're all marching their way towards probably, the big base that Yoda helps the Wookiees at in Revenge of the Sith. Because remember, this stuff is, leading right up to Revenge of the Sith. So kind of just getting those things in place.
You reminded me of something that I thought was kind of funny or interesting is whenever they had like a giant droid army that they were showing, uh, the budget must have just been low enough that this is what they did. So what they did when they had, say, I don't know, 100 or 50 of them or whatever that they're trying to show is they would draw kind of a rough sketch of the first row of droids, and then anybody behind them was just a silhouette, like just the outline, and that was it. Like no further detail other than maybe a tiny bit of shading, but like no facial detail, no even lines for arms. Um, it's one of those things of like, couldn't you have at least drawn, say, maybe 3 rows and then the rest just be silhouettes? But no, they drew like 1 row and then everything else was just an outline.
They did have some really silly looking things that, they're like, my guess is what they were trying to do was, oh, they're not going to focus on this little part of the screen. They're going to focus on the what's really important on the screen. And so then, you know, they can try to get away with things like that. But even there was a scene in the very beginning where, because this picks up right when the first one ends, where they're going to save the Jedi from Grievous, and they're taking that gunship that kind of looks like a shark, and there's a part in it where after they collect the Jedi and they're trying to escape, the ship rises up, and the clones that are visible do not look like anatomically correct clones. They look like the dudes from Among Us, like those little minions, I guess you could call them. They look like we talk about that this art style is very different. It was even more different for the parts that they weren't really hoping that you were paying attention to. So
Maybe what they thought of, at least for the groups of them, where they didn't draw them all out in detail, they thought, in the end of A New Hope, when they're doing the awards ceremony, we got away with a drawing there and nobody really noticed it. I wonder if we could do that again in this. Just do it a bunch of times and we'll see if nobody notices this time.
well, here's the thing. Now that we noticed it from A New Hope, we're seeing it everywhere.
Can
Cat's out of the bag.
we just take a second and discuss how ugly Anakin looks in your background right now?
He's
Just
not. He looks intense. Oh,
the the face and the teeth. Ugh. Just the way it's not him, it's the expression on his face that's weird.
it's actually like talking about this picture. It's one of the things I forgot to mention, and the things I really liked about this volume is they really connected the dots on a few things of because between episode 2 and episode 3, you know, Anakin becomes a Jedi Knight. He gets the scar on his eye,
His
and he
little
gets a
ponytail gets cut off.
he. Let's say that again.
His little ponytail gets cut off.
Yeah, which is part of him becoming a Jedi Knight, but
Right.
his mechanical arm completely changes, and we get like all those questions answered in this little show. So one thing that they did really good was providing some answers to like why does he look different in episode 3. um they don't really show us how he got the scar on his eye. We just see that he gets one.
I was just gonna ask. I didn't pick up on where it came from. I just know Padme was like, "What happened to your eye?"
Yeah, so I tried looking it up, and a lot of sources are saying that he got it from Ventress,
Hmm,
but we never see it in this show. That's in like the comics or something. So,
interesting.
and I don't know if they actually did it in the other Clone Wars show. We're going to be rewatching all that stuff. So, and having future Shoot the Sheep podcasts covering those. So, we will be finding out sooner or later. But is there anything else you want to say about the Clone Wars show, Volume 2?
I feel like that wraps it up pretty good.
Alrighty. Well, that was our Shoot the Sheev podcast for this week. We talked about the Volume 2 of the Clone Wars 2D animated specials that came out in between the films Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. If you enjoyed this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way you are notified when the next Shoot the Sheev video drops. We tend to do them on Wednesdays. So if you're looking for another one, visit us back here on Wednesdays. Drop us a like if you like the video and drop us a comment letting us know your thoughts about Star Wars, The Clone Wars Volume 2 in 2D animation. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.